one of you out there. I hope you guys are hanging in there. You know, it's trying times for all of us, and it's an odd time to have a conversation about this when all of the metrics and all of the things that we normally deploy in our business are being tested incredibly and tested like they've never been tested before. So as I was forming my notes yesterday, the day before, and this morning, I wanted to make sure that what I had to say was pertinent to the times, but at the same time also remembering that we are in a time that we all have to believe is going to pass. We have to believe that what we've done all these years is meaningful and has a purpose, and that one wise person said to me recently, if it was good then it will be good after then. And in other words, when we get to the other side of this crazy time that we're in, we have to believe that we have a spectacular product, that we have some of the most amazing people, that we have an amazing culture, that we have something very, very special that our customers want. And if we believe that, we'll be able to grind through this. But we all know that it's going to take enormous sacrifice to get there. And I just hope that you all are hanging in there and that you're holding the fire strong. We certainly are. I feel extremely fortunate to be part of a team of incredible leaders and smart people. I feel incredibly fortunate to be part of the country of Turks and Caicos for so many years. To all my Turks and Caicos friends, you should know that I'm grateful for having been welcomed into this community, and we consider it our duty to give back in any way that we can. There's no greater test on our ability to give back than this one that we're in front of right now. So having said all that, I think I would just talk about the topic, and that is trying to manage the balance, sort of balance the bottom line while also keeping the balance of our most important asset being our people. We all know this. This is intrinsic to business. Some focus, in some industries, we focus on money. Some industries, we focus on other things. In the hospitality industry, people are everything. And I think that trying to figure out how to capture a solid profit while also ensuring that your employees and your leaders feel part of that process is a challenging balance. My first thing that I've always felt is important to live by is that you have to lead. You have to lead, and you have to decide. You have to make decisions. When you make those decisions as a leader of any organization, or even a leader of a department or a supervisor of a specific department in any business, you decide, you make the decision, and then you live with that decision and you own it. Whatever the ramifications, the consequences of those decisions, you live with them and you take responsibility for those decisions and you drive it to a point. Hopefully your decision is the right one, but you must have a belief in your decision. In terms of the profit side, one of the things that I thought was really important to point out is managing expectations on all levels. I always start with my own partners. We have tremendous capital partners and supporters from abroad who have been our partners for the better part of 20 plus years. And the key when you go into a foreign destination is to manage expectations. Partners need to understand that there's money involved, but there's also people involved. In some cases, what's necessarily applicable in Texas doesn't apply in Turks and Caicos or in Tennessee or Timbuktu. And sometimes profit is, sorry, just reading, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to read those texts. So apologies for the glasses. All those of you who know me know I don't wear these too often, but I've reached that age. So hang in there. So what I was saying about the expectations is sometimes decisions are made that defer to your team. In other words, there may be a decision that is driven by empathy or a need to nurture or to help in ways that may not be necessarily the same way that you would do it in Texas or Tennessee, as I said, or Timbuktu. And those decisions may affect your bottom line. managing those expectations with your external partners is really important, and that they have to feel like they have ownership of what that decision is and what those decisions involve. It's not just the money, it's the money and the people. And if everybody can buy into that plan, then you have a chance to win. But if it's all about the money from day one, you may struggle. That's what I found. As it relates to to people generally, I would say of all the things that has been so meaningful to me is as a foreigner in a foreign land, and I've lived in 4 countries and worked and or owned businesses in 3 of those. What I found was most important was that I had to go out of my way as the foreigner to learn about the country I was in, the people, the culture, understanding more about how people think in that jurisdiction. And most of the countries I was in before this time were only stints of 4 to 6 years. And ultimately now in the Turks and Caicos 20, I think like many of you on this call have found an incredible personal relationship with this country that has far exceeded anything you had before. And so for me, from the very early days, it was not about making changes or making business decisions that were, in my view, the right ones early on. It was more about understanding how everybody thought and worked, and the culture of working, and the culture of handling customers, the culture of handling money, or the culture of handling what time we get to work and how we get to work, and how we handle our conversations, during work, and what we talk about. And I always said that to you, many of you know my partner, Nikhil, he and I in the early days, we used to sit down and say, listen, for these first few months, when he first came in, which was a couple of years after I used to sit with him for hours, and I'd say, listen, just do nothing for 3 or 4 months and just learn about how things work, because he had come from Singapore. I'd come from South Africa at the time, but obviously I'm in the United States, so I had different perspectives. For me, the key was making sure that the team understood that I was there to understand them before imposing any will or imposing some specific business idea or concept that I may have learned elsewhere. And over time, the trust factor became really strong. And therefore, by the time I got to that place where I felt something needed to change, there was a trust factor. And that was only possible by creating those relationships. So that relationship creation process also involves some very human components, I think, that have worked well for me. Starts with empathy. You got to understand, I believe, you got to be ready to understand that person across the table, what he or she may be going through, what they're feeling. If you can try and do that, then it makes your decisions a little bit easier. At least it helps you make your decisions. Everyone you deal with on any given day, we know this, is dealing with some challenge. And if we can all understand that, sometimes we can have better success in the decisions we make and the relationships we build in our work. And I found that that's been very critical, is empathy. I try to teach it to my own sons, and it seems to be something that is harder to teach when you're younger, but when you get older, you realize it's an important trait. The other thing that I wanted to emphasize is the notion of being unselfish. You have to learn how to share, and sharing is not just in the material wealth or material things that may be created. It's in information, it's in knowledge, it's in things that you may have learned along the way in your own career that you thought were meaningful, and maybe the person you're talking to or the employees you're talking to don't necessarily have that same experience and might benefit from that information. Be willing to share that information. One of the things I learned most importantly when I first arrived in the Turks and Caicos was there was this reticence to change. And I think that's indicative in any culture, any country, anywhere. But I think it was particularly so here, where there was this sense that, at least from my point of view, that when my arrival was possibly, or me bringing somebody else along to help us do things differently or better, or perhaps help us grow, the perception was that the pie was always this big. It was never going to be any bigger than this. And so anyone who resisted the change felt like his or her slice, which was that big, was never going to be any bigger. And so anybody coming in made their slice smaller and smaller. The job I had was to make sure that they understood that the pie, if it was this big, when we're done, it should be this big. So their slice is now that. And that was a long process, but it was critical to be patient on that process. Now, having said all that, empathy and being willing to share and not being selfish, there's also a point where you have to be very firm. And I have to say that of all the things I've been accused of, I have been accused of perhaps being too lenient and too generous at times. And there's no question that that has happened. And so I have found a way to balance that by ensuring that in our team, we have leaders who help me balance that. And the way to do that, in my experience, is to always be willing to hire somebody smarter than you. That's really hard for some people to do. Lots of people want to hire everybody who doesn't know as much as they, or perhaps is junior to them, or perhaps, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but I've seen it. And I have been very, very surprised at when we made that decision early on in our business to bring in people that were smarter than me. That makes for a very healthy business, because people then have a feeling that they have a stake at the table, that when they're, and when I say something or they say something, we listen to each other, because I know that he or she probably knows something more than I do. And I can learn enormous amounts from smarter people. If I had only people who said yes to me at all times, I don't think that we would be able to grow. And vice versa. If there were people in our company who felt that only yeses from their own subordinates or their own team players were the only kind of people that they would hire, I feel that we would stagnate. The other thing that we all need to remember is sometimes we just got to listen. I'm not very good at that sometimes. I learned over time that I just need to stop talking and start listening. And sometimes it's better to say nothing and just try and process everything you hear and then say something later. We've all learned this, that with the advent of social media and in particular email, that we've sometimes fallen into this trap of reacting to something we read right away. And oftentimes what's written is not exactly what is said, or vice versa. Something is said is written differently. And so I've encouraged our team over and over again, in particular our younger team who have been born into this email society. I didn't have a cell phone until I was 32. So for me, and many of you on the call probably remember those times when we had only a landline and email didn't exist. It was a different era. And now email, we have this tendency to just zip off emails and then react to a reaction or react to a response that may get out of control for absolutely no reason at all. And when I see that happening, I encourage our team, just pick up the phone. Don't even respond to the email. Pick up the phone, call your colleague, whoever it is you're dealing with, and work it out. Or go see them. There is no replacement for personal interaction. Body language, facial expressions, emotions, relationships are born and bred and nurtured in a face-to-face or a voice interaction, in my opinion. So we all need to do that, I think, to check ourselves every now and then and say, is email the best way to communicate this message? Is it better that I just get on the phone? Some people like that. I think that from time to time, if you can check that, it's worthwhile. And finally, what I have learned is you need to show some humility. In this crisis more than ever, but in life we know this is important. So in terms of our profit, how do we manage our profit in all that? I talked a lot about people. If we do everything that I just described, at least us, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but for us, if we do everything that I just described and somehow that can permeate the organization, good people come and good people join and good people get better and good people grow and they feel like they're part of something. There has to be this sense of ownership of what you are doing. And if you have that, the profits come because people work harder, they try harder, they put their hearts into it, in the goods and the bads. And I think that the profit, if your fundamentals that you have to your business are sound, and I believe that in this country, we have exceptionally good fundamentals. Those fundamentals from the day we started 20 years ago to this very moment, and this is a conversation I had with a journalist only about 4 days ago. She asked me why people should invest in Turks and Caicos. Because the fundamentals that brought us all here 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 weeks ago, whichever your case is, have been the same since we started. We have the most unbelievable, beautiful location. Our geographical location and proximity to the biggest markets in the world is better than anybody. Our weather is always good. The ocean is spectacular. And most importantly, the people have hearts the size of cars. So when you arrive here, it feels like you've come to someplace very special. Now, when you talk about investment, which we did in this particular journalist in her questions, said those fundamentals on the legal and economic side also have not changed at all since that first day. You use the dollar. Foreign ownership of land is permitted. They have a good title system. There's a good legal system. There is the rule of law applies and it's strong. And that has proven time and again to our benefit. Those fundamentals have not changed today from COVID or from anything else. And so if we continue to deliver that message, one, our tourists will come back, and two, our investors will come back. That's my view. And ultimately, those profits will return. Now, make no mistake, in our 20-year history, in my entire career, and probably all of you, this is without a doubt the most difficult challenge that we are facing. But every time I get on the phone with our teams, and I'm sure you're all doing this every day or every week, and it's weird because we're all communicating in the way we're communicating right now. And everybody gets to see everybody in their own sort of setting. So as you can tell, I put a white wall behind me because I don't want you to see my bedroom. That's a disaster, right? Or wherever I might be working from, because we're all working all over the place. I'm sure you've all seen the videos where a CEO or a corporate executive or a man or woman are sitting in their so-called office, and all of a sudden a kid comes flying in, jumps on the parent or the person, and it totally disrupts the entire conversation. Well, that happens all the time to all of us. We know it, and it's a really inefficient way to work. But to get back to what I was saying was that every time I get on a call with our leaders and our team, it just inspires me that everybody is just hanging on, and people are still smiling even though they're facing an unbelievable and uncertain time. And to all of those on my team who might be on this call, you know who you are. You know that I have the highest respect for each and every one of you. And I'm just grateful that we are on a team together, because we're going to have to work through this together, and we will. But I just know that I can't wait to get back to our properties. I can't wait to get back and high five my team. I can't wait to go into the laundry and say hello to the housekeepers, or to go to the maintenance area and say hello to our gardeners, or go into the staff canteen and see how everybody's doing. Those are things that drove me from day one. It's that personal relationship. And ultimately, as I said, focus on the fundamentals, drive the fundamentals, take time to build relationships with your people, and everything else would fall into place. That's my view. I probably could go on forever, but I thought maybe I would stop now, Sonia, and offer, if you want me to stop or continue, I will, but maybe I could stop and allow any comments or questions.
Well, at this point, I'd encourage you to continue. I think people have been just sitting back and listening intently. So I would like to make the comment here that since we're pretty much halfway through, this would be a great time for you guys to start dropping some questions in. If there's anything that you'd like Mark to touch on that he hasn't just yet while we listen to him go on to another step. The Q&A box is the place to drop those questions, or even if there's a comment you want to make, we'll be looking out for those. You can go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Thank you. You know, I think that one of the things that we need to all remember is the reason Turks and Caicos has been so successful is because we have personalized the experience. Every one of us, every one of you has somehow brought your personality to the table and created this destination that is unique in its own way. It's unique because it's not a mass tourism destination. Our investors, our guests have a personal relationship with our employees and our leaders, and it's different to say a destination like Aruba or Bahamas or St. Martin, where the traditional hotel model has obviously thrived. We've thrived on a different model, and that model has succeeded and continues to succeed because we all put our personal effort into it in a way that creates these bonds with our customers. And, you know, there are many developers in this country who have done much more than us, and they know who they are, and they are my friends, and they are my trusted colleagues, and I have the most unbelievable respect for every man and woman who's developed in this country. And those who have really done it well have embraced that philosophy, and that is find a way to connect with your customers so that the trust is built, that there's a relationship is built, and that there is an ownership, a sense of ownership. And I think that this country, of all the places I've ever lived, embodies that better than anybody. I mean, you can use examples of, I don't know, you get a guest who goes into the airport and sees one of the security agents who she knew, who works a second job at a hotel somewhere, and then that guest says, "Hey, Shireen," or "Hey, Lisa," or whoever. That doesn't happen in big places, and that's one of the things that people really remember when they leave Turks and Caicos, is that the faces and the names and the hearts make it just better, right? It just makes it better, and people pay more for better. And that's why we're able to accomplish what is widely considered to be the highest rate in the Caribbean, or up at least in the top 2 or 3, able to consistently over and over get new investment. And we've all seen it. 2008, the world collapsed. Turks and Caicos took its hits, but it wasn't a disaster for this country. The hotel industry stayed afloat. The hotel industry continued to do what it does well. And so we had a period where we just kind of plateaued on the real estate side. There were some drops, admittedly, but it wasn't a free fall. We didn't have everybody selling real estate like they were in Las Vegas or London or Texas or Florida. We didn't have that. People said, you know what? Maybe we can keep this alive for a little while. And we did. Over 2008, 9, and 10, and then 11, things took off. We held our own for 3 solid years. And we did it because our tourism product was special. Once we made it through that time, the investment started again. And you're seeing it now. And I believe that that process will repeat itself over and over again in this country as long as we stick to our fundamentals. I'm going to take a pause, Sonia. get
Oh
some
yeah,
water.
absolutely. That's a good place to pause because I have some questions coming in via WhatsApp and also in the Q&A section. So let's get to those. Someone is saying that empathy and listening works great most of the time, and we need that more than ever now. But lots of people, especially the more vulnerable team members, are of course really on edge at this point. What would you suggest companies put in place to assist their more vulnerable team members financially?
Well, I think that we are doing anything and everything we can at this stage to ensure the livelihoods of our team members. That is, without question, our single driving task at this point. And that is not an easy task. It is, it's requiring sacrifice on all levels, starting with me and everybody else in the team. And our team has collectively decided to make those sacrifices. So there have been, as everybody probably knows, pay cuts across the entire sector. We're no different. And in conjunction with that, we're talking about additional measures that our charity arm and our foundation, and generally our entire team, can contribute to. So we will roll out our staff canteens in all of our hotels again as soon as we're allowed to the extent that we can deploy that into the community with working with some of our charity organizations like the Salvation Army or the United Way or the churches. I know that some of our team members are working on that, and we have to do that. We have to find ways to keep food on the table for everybody. And we all know that that's not going to be easy. We also know that we need to work with our local government to see if we can find ways to work together to ensure that that happens. It cannot just be, in this case, like in the hurricane, it cannot just be, government doing its part and private sector handling its own thing. I think we have more. This is different. And so I believe it's important that government and private sector begin to communicate in new ways that we haven't perhaps done as much as we need to this time. That answer the question?
I think that did a lot. Let's go to another one. Someone is asking, in your view, how long this economy can survive under the present condition, and how do you see the reopening happening?
I mean, that's a really difficult question. I wish I had a crystal ball. How long we can survive I'm afraid is not something I can answer. Although I will tell you that as an entity, as a company, we are making plans to weather this through the year. I don't know if we're going to need to do that. We have already forecasted some activity in September, but we don't know if that's going to occur. My own personal view is we've pushed this to the very limit. I think the time is now. You're seeing conversations that are broader than just COVID. Questions about reigniting the economy and reigniting enterprise, and we need to start talking like that now. Even if those are the tiniest baby steps, I think we got to start thinking about the fact. And Nikhil and I talked about this just only a moment ago. We need to remember that people are smart. They're responsible. They are. People know the information. We've all been it's been a deluge of information for months on COVID and what it does and how it feels and what happens and who's most vulnerable and how it's contagious and so on and so forth. But when you're now looking at new data, the data is saying a little bit different to what they were saying a few months ago. So now we're starting to get more information and people are getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And the question has to be asked, if we decided tomorrow to open our airport, or let's say June 1st, I don't know what date, May 1st, June 1st, choose a date. And we worked with our airlines and said, this is our situation. We have this many cases. These are the measures that we've taken. These are the things that we're going to do in our public spaces. These are the measures we're going to do on a health and safety point of view. and then open it to the customer to make a decision. My guess is that we would have some response because people know now who's high risk and who's not. And so if I'm in high risk, I'm probably not going to get on a plane. But if I'm not, and I really need to get out of my house and want to live my life, I might get on the plane. And maybe out of 100 people, 15 do that. But that's 15 more than 0. And I'm not saying that we do it tomorrow. I'm not saying that we do it in a cavalier way. I'm just saying that that conversation needs to start, and needs to start pretty soon. So I hope that answers the question. It's a little bit vague, but I'm hopeful, like whoever wrote the question, that this ends sooner rather than later, because we are having to deploy enormous resources. We're having to access new sources of funding. We're having to scrape where we never scraped before. And we're not sure if we're going to get all the support we need. Every day is a new challenge, but I'd like to think that we have a shot at it for the third quarter. I'd like to believe that.
Thank you for that. I'm going to lump 2 questions together here. I think they go hand in hand pretty much. As most resorts and businesses have needed to do salary cuts to survive, have there been other ways or benefits that your company has created to assist your staff that adds value and assist them through this time? Some of that you've already touched on. But more pointedly, this person wants to know, how do you keep employee morale up when staff is suffering financially? And on to that, I will attach another question. How are you keeping employees informed and engaged during this time?
Well, I'd like to say that that's a difficult one. We're keeping our engagement with our employees through our leaders. So I and our other key leaders engage with the top level of our organization, who then in turn communicate with their team members. But at the same token, in the same time, I'm now started a sort of a video messaging process. I taped a video message last week, which it seemed like 10 minutes after I taped it, my decisions were being amended because of things happening in our company or in the world. So it seems to be something you almost need to do twice a day sometimes. But I think that we're going to have to, again, to the point of reopening the economy, we've got to do this, people. We've got to say, okay, even if frankly, this is what we were planning before this started, was that we were going to have 20 or 30% occupancy, but we're going to keep everybody employed, doing things that perhaps have nothing to do with customers. Come to the hotel, let's get to work. Whatever that work is, we'll figure it out. People want to go somewhere and do something. And I think that's going to help us all lift our spirits a little bit. I can't encourage us to get back to work stronger. So that's what we're trying right now. I don't know if it's working as well as I'd like it to. I know that the question is, if somebody is hurting financially, how can you lift their spirits? Our hope is that they are strong, that they have a strong family unit, that they communicate with us through our team, and that my efforts to ensure food on the table, which are colossal efforts, I have to say, and not something that is easily accomplished, that those have an impact. It is an unprecedented time. It's uncharted territory. We got to keep trying, and I think communication, either directly or through your team leaders, is essential, and it has to happen regularly. I hope that
Great.
helps.
I want to share a comment with you, and then we have someone with a hand up. I'll take I'll unmute your mic, Stephanie, in just a second so you can ask that question yourself. But just a comment for you, Mark, it is great to hear all of your comments, and I truly support everything that you've said. I think this is an extremely difficult subject to talk about when we all know in this current time, there's no way to really balance the bottom line. I agree it is still important to prioritize that we look after our staff over and above just looking at figures. As you said, we will survive and we will bounce back strong. Thank you for your knowledgeable and informative talk. And that's coming to you from Adam Twig of The Source.
Thanks, Adam. Hope you're doing okay, bud.
All right, Stephanie. You should be unmuted now, Stephanie.
I think so. I put the question in. Mark, thanks for addressing it. All of us. It's nice to have some continuity in the community. And I wanted to ask if you would repeat your fundamentals so that we're sharing the same or similar messages.
Well, I'll list them quickly. It was lead, decide, and live with your decisions and own them. Manage expectations with your external partners who may not be in the day-to-day, both on a profit level basis and the decisions that you have with respect to your people, how they may affect those profits. Help, empathy, help when you can. Selfishness is really not a very good. Is not welcome. Is not useful. Share information. Share the benefits. Share knowledge. Be firm, but be firm when you're using empathy and your willingness to share. Don't let it go too far. And if you have a tendency like me to be overly generous at times, make sure you have partners or fellow colleagues who are smarter than you. Maybe not necessarily in your field of expertise, but smarter than you in something. So that they have a stake at the table and their opinion is valued. Listen. Take the time to listen to what people are saying to you. Show some humility and take the time to understand the culture of those who may be different to you. And take the time to learn about others, because what we necessarily have learned in wherever we've come from doesn't always apply in the same way here or elsewhere. I think those are many of the things that I talked about, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for repeating those, Mark. You did touch a little earlier as you were talking about the fact that on the other side of this, there are going to have to be some decisions made. Everybody's now taking a look at what their new best practices are going to look like. We have a question here in line with that. What do you envision will be the new norm as we break away from this pandemic?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we have going for us is we have lots of open space here, and we are a small destination. I think people are going to migrate to smaller destinations where there's not humongous amounts of people, enabling our customers to have lots of elbow room and open spaces like we do. I think are going to be one of the things that we should actually market very strongly. This is, you're not going to mega hotels with, tons and tons of people, and I think that's important to our brand. I think we're going to make adjustments to things that we've taken for granted. I don't know if this will happen, but my guess is, and we were already sort of looking at this before COVID hit in such a way, things like buffet breakfasts and some of these more community spaces, maybe we're going to find ways to sort of change those over time, at least until such time as the full information of this of this virus and its disease are known. There are a lot of doctors out there who are starting to know a lot more now than they did a few months ago. And those who are wiser and older than me have said, look, you need to know that we've got to focus on getting through to the other side. And if we do, at some point, there will be a vaccine. At some point, there will be treatment. At some point, we'll accept that's endemic. It's not a pandemic, it's endemic. In other words, it's in our system. And our bodies are adjusting to it, to whatever that is. And so, you know, maybe next year, this time, someone's going to walk up to you and say, how you feeling? I got COVID. Oh, all right. Hopefully we're at that place. Well, did you take your vaccine? No, I forgot. You know, that's how the flu is. And we'd like to all think that that's what's going to happen with this. There are doctors talking like this. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying that this conversation is happening. And I think that we're going to have to take interim measures that are a little foreign to us, that just give our customers a little bit more satisfaction and make them feel like we're taking this very seriously. As an example, tangible things like there's maybe a card in the room and the housekeeper's is a checklist. We've done this, 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 and this. And that's laid on the bed. And those are things that people would just assume are done in the past, but now we've done, we've wiped down all surfaces with a disinfectant of the following nature. And our housekeeper had fresh gloves when she came in. Those gloves are in the trash. I don't know. I'm just winging it for the moment. All I'm saying is that if we can give tangible examples of things we're doing, I think that will be meaningful to people. But the first sort of 15 or 20 people I just described getting on that plane that I mentioned a moment ago, they're probably not going to be those who are sensitive to that. It'll be the next 15 who's a little bit more sensitive and want to see those things happen. So it's going to be an evolutionary process. And I don't really it's going to be hard for all of us. But we're going to learn a lot in the next 6 to 8 months.
Great, thank you. What recommendations would you give to other business leaders here in Turks and Caicos, especially those who are feeling discouraged?
I have 5 or 6 rules that I live by every day. And one of those in particular is when you wake up every day, you kind of got to write down, you got to manage your own expectations and be patient with yourself. Write down 3 things that you can accomplish for the day because you're going to be woefully inefficient. Write those down. Say, I'm going to do these 3 things, whatever they are. And if you get those done in the day, your day's a success. Maybe all 3 of those are towards salvaging and saving your business. Maybe some of those are to your family. Maybe those are a combination of both. I think it's important to set out goals for the day. In this environment, you can easily get trapped into the, oh, I'll just wear my robe and tool around my house and everything cool, you know, and it's hard. And we have to try and avoid that. And so sometimes, for those of us who ever worked at home before, I did before for many years, and when we were starting this company, get up, do whatever you do for the morning regimen. Sometimes run, sometimes go do an exercise, sometimes just walk outside for a few minutes, come back in, take a shower, put on your game face. And the game face is some outfit, whatever outfit you'd wear at work. And feel like you're going to work. Set up a space where you feel like you can be productive. I think that is one thing that's important. I don't know if that answers the question, but I would say it's possibly not, because that business leader is probably thinking about money. I would encourage you, whoever's asking, to look at every single person who's ever come in contact with your business and involve them in the communication, in the conversation. No stone goes unturned. There may be something out there that you haven't explored yet. I would tell you, in the last 7 days, I've explored so many different options of ways to ensure certain parts of our plan. And they are things that I never thought I would look at. And so if you think you've looked at them all, think again.
Great response on that. How do you see the timeline for reignition of the hotel business relating to the starting up of the real estate business?
Well, we all know that the hospitality industry drives our real estate. If we can produce a good hospitality product, real estate will follow shortly thereafter. My own view on the stimulus by the government is that we have no choice but to keep that going for the balance of the year. If we really want to see or kickstart some activity, that's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen it's certainly not going to happen in the quantities that I think we all hope in the next 3 months. There will be activity, make no mistake, but it's going to be different kind of activity. I think that it's important that those initiatives on stamp duty continue. I frankly believe that the import duty relaxation on construction should be expanded dramatically. I think that we need, as a country and as a community, even us in the hospitality business, need to emphasize to our government leaders that the one industry that we have right now that has signs of real life, in fact, not just signs, but actually has life, is construction and investment, but mostly construction. So those homes and other projects that are under construction right now, we need to do everything we can to ensure they continue that. Because the last thing we need is also the construction industry to stop working. Hotel industry is done for the moment. Hopefully it doesn't last too long and we can get back to work. But we need to encourage everybody who's currently paying their construction, their contractor to build a home or a resort or a project to continue doing that. And the best way to do it is give them a reason. And I think that has to be accommodate the import duties need to be expanded, and the stamp duty needs to be continued for the balance of the year.
Thank you. Now, someone is saying that they heard a U.S. economist state that land vacation will likely grow as cruise ship requests decline. Are you of that same thinking?
No question about it. I think if we can, the good news is, like before, this country was driven by the ingenuity and the efforts that our airline partners deployed, and it started really in earnest in 2011 with JetBlue. They're just as smart as everybody else on this phone call. They know what they're doing, and they're going to do what they have to do to get their customers on their planes. And so we got to believe that they're going to make good decisions, and those decisions will impact us. We got to do our part, and our part is be ready. And I think that there's no question that if we can get through that part, get that air travel component right, it's going to come, and it's going to come hard and fast. I don't know if it's going to come in June or July or December or next March, but I'm hoping that it comes this fall in some way.
Great. And just before we close the session, left this one for last, someone wants to know more on the personal side of things. Has development and hospitality always been your career path?
I hate to repeat a story that probably many on the call have heard before, but I started out in France. Right after graduation of university, I moved to France. I was quite restless, and I wanted to live abroad and work abroad. And I originally started in the computer business, and I found that, and I was working in a firm in France that I kind of knocked on a bunch of doors and ultimately got a job in France, and ultimately found myself really bored, and I wasn't learning French fast enough. So a French friend of mine came up to me and said, "I got a plan for you." So he encouraged me to move to Saint-Tropez. Some of you heard this, and I don't want to bore you, but I moved to Saint-Tropez and started raking sand as a plagiste, as they call it in France, which is basically a beach attendant for a whole season. And at that moment in time, I really became involved in the hospitality business, at least in my heart. And ultimately, I ended up in real estate development in Belgium, working in a master plan community development company. So, short answer is, that was a short version, but no, I was not always in hospitality. I learned how to develop condominium hotels, actually explicitly develop hotels and condominiums with a hotel component in Cape Town, South Africa. and by default became a management company because we had no one to call upon to manage these properties we were developing. So that's how I learned the art of managing these hotels. Although I'm not a hospitality trained person, it was more the development side that forced me to learn hospitality. Hope that helps.
I think that covers it all, Mark. We can't thank you enough for sharing your time and your expertise with us here today. We've had a resounding response to this session, and so I want to also thank everyone that has joined us today and stuck around for the entire time. So they were definitely engaged in every word that you shared. We also want to thank you on behalf of the association, because Grace Bay Resorts is just waiting for the TCHTA Community Staples Initiative to get going so that you guys can chip in and provide your staff with those staple packages. And so we're so happy that you're on board with that. And also, because we have so many members that are smaller businesses and look to people like yourselves as leaders in the sector to kind of give them an idea on what they should be thinking and the direction they should be going in. We are so appreciative that you've been willing to share best practices and also, as you've done today, share your personal views and insight with everyone. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate it, Sonia. To everyone who's on the call, you're welcome. If you want to chat further, I'm obviously available. You know how to find me. I wish you all the best of luck. Please stay positive and keep fighting the good fight.